Hello, everyone. This is the Sage of Calidor. How are you this fine day? I'm doing good, and thank you again for picking my video. I greatly appreciate it. Along with all of my other videos, please leave a like, subscribe, share. Please go ahead. Well, today I'm going to be talking about Warhammer Total War 2 Albion Faction as a faction. Now, there has been some discussion over what this new faction is going to be. Like, Creative Assembly has hinted us, what is this other faction going to be like, similar to Norska? Are we going to get the Southern Realms, like Telia and Estalia? Are we going to get the Vampire Coast? Are we going to get Araby? Who else are we going to get? And as I mentioned before, I think it's Albion, and I'm going to explain. Albion is right there, as you can see by the nice arrow pointing right there. If you need extra help, it is the island right there. Now, the reason why I think it's Albion has to do with the Vortex campaign. Should Creative Assembly want to continue the model of the Vortex, Albion is the best choice because the Vampire Coast has nothing to do with the Vortex. The Southern Realms are just similar to conquistadors of Central and South America. They would want to go to the New World to get treasure, to get wealth. They would not bother with the Vortex campaign. The Tomb Kings were included, and yet they found a way to work the Tomb Kings into the Vortex campaign. They ignored the Vortex, but they used 5 of the books of Nagash, or at least I think it's 5. Well, 5 or I think it's 5. Yeah, 5 of the books of Nagash. If I made a mistake, please feel free to correct me down in the comments below. So the Tomb Kings had a tie to the Vortex. So Albion is the best choice. And to understand why, a brief bit of history. Albion is an island that is out of the way for much of the world's history, but during the time of the Old Ones, this was actually a very important part of the various wards the Old Ones put on the world. And when they were constructing these special temples, wards, or whatever, they found the humans of these islands to be surprisingly well adapted. They were able to learn how to use various limited aspects of Old One's magic. So as a result, they were taught how to use magic, and the humans of Albion developed this culture around the Old Ones. And everything worked out well until everything went down and out, essentially. So there is that. Chaos came in, wrecked the place, and Albion was cut off from the world because of the magic that was put in to soak away chaos. And created this misty, rainy place. That's why Albion in Warhammer lore is a land of mists and constant rainstorms. Eventually, Albion was opened up to the world thanks to the workings of Bel. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce his name. He is the first demon prince, and quite obviously, it is this guy right here. He was imprisoned in a sphere in Albion. However, he was still busy. He managed to recruit some corrupted priests, essentially, some corrupted spellcasters, called the Dark Masters. And he was able to get minions to further his own ambitions of conquest. There were two major factions at this time period: the Truthsayers, which were these guys right here, and they served as the Druids of Albion, and these Dark Emissaries who were corrupted by the first of the Demon Princes. And this sparked a war between the two. This sparked a war between the forces of order and the forces of destruction, which saw Albion being parched out, being divided out. Like we have the Dark Elves right here. Malekith took advantage of the invitations of the Dark Emissaries to get treasures against his rivals in Ulthuan. The Elves, the High Elves of Ulthuan, actually gave naval aid. Actually, you know what? Yellow's not a good color. Let's try blue. That's a better color. So that's the Dark Elves' domain. The High Elves blockaded this in an effort to prevent Dark Elves from causing problems. But they are not the only ones to get involved. The Bretonnians came in here as a crusade. Orcs and goblins settled here. Lizardmen answered the call and set up shop here. And the Empire went here. So Albion, at this point in Warhammer history, has been essentially lost to history by this point. This was the center to an important event, but this is still, I believe, an important part of Warhammer lore. Like, all the various factions discovered Albion, and they saw an important stake into this. They got an important stake into this, and they all came in to get a piece of it and either help out the forces of order or the forces of destruction for their own ends. So, this is the map of the Vortex campaign, and Albion is right here. A very small map. Well, Yep, a very small province, but workable. I'm going to tell you this, it's workable. You can have a faction right here, a single faction right here, and another one right there, or you could have one right here and right here. Alright? And the Vortex, you see the Vortex is important, it's right here. And you can see it's actually in a position where you could expand right up here for a bit, and it'll take some time before you run into the Skaven or a Dark Elf faction, or you could go as far as to the High Elves of Ulthuan. Now, first off, I wish to tell you, it is possible to create Albion as a faction. It is not really as hard as you may think. Will require some creativity, though, and I'm going to start with working with what we have. First off are the Druids, namely the Truthsayers and the Dark Emissaries. We can use them as magical heroes. The Truthsayers for the more lighter forms of magic, like the lore of life, the lore of light, life, and the heavens. Maybe even high magic from the High Elves and the Lizardmen. I don't know. I see that as a strictly elf thing, but anyway. And we have the Dark Emissary that can use the lore of death, maybe the lore of beasts, and maybe dark magic. The more dark, and the lore of fire, and maybe the lore of metal as well. So we have that. And we also have this weird construct called fen beasts that are summoned by both Truthsayers and Dark Emissaries. Like, the marshes of Albion are full of these things, and the Druids can bend them to their will. So we have already diversified form of magic and a construct. We also have giants. The giants served as protectors and sentinels of this island for a long time, so it makes sense that giants will be included into their armies. Now, they're technically not supposed to be unintelligent compared to the Chaos Giants or the Orcs and Goblins Giants. What we could see is probably a giant unit that wields something like a giant weapon, and a giant that throws rocks like the Cygor. So we have right here a couple of powerful units right here. To fill out the rest, we need to understand what Albion is based on, and Albion is based on the British Isles, essentially British Isles during the time of the Celts. So it's a Celtic, Gaelic-based civilization. And I mentioned how it rains a lot, like mists. It's similar to how rainy it is in certain parts of England. Again, if I'm wrong, feel free to mention it in the comments below so I can improve. So, this will require some creative liberties. Quite a bit of creative liberties, but I don't think it's too much. I mean, you have swordsmen, you have javelinsmen. Listen, to be honest, creative assembly hasn't... this isn't out of their zone. They did quite a bit of creative liberties when creating Norska. They looked into the lore, and they picked out what they could work with it, and they expanded on it. So, it is possible to create Albion. And how does this work in the Vortex campaign? Well, because of their sacrifices they made in the war against chaos, they would take a concern in the Vortex. They would want to ensure the Vortex is maintained, but they would also want to seek to use the Vortex in the rituals of the Vortex to cleanse the land. That's my idea on how this could work in the Vortex campaign. They would want to use the power of the Vortex to channel and cleanse their island out of chaos corruption. Already you can tell this is going to be a hard campaign. And so, yeah, ever since the war against chaos, Albion has been a wreck. So they will use the Vortex to clean up Albion while furthering their duty to the old ones. And a very likely gaming style that they are strongly encouraged to do is, like, you could go in different directions, but a game mechanic they could make, besides going to war against the neighboring ones, is encouragements to develop links of peaceful relationships with the Lizardmen because they have that old one tie. And for lords, they can have druids and they can have giants, like druids to serve as the magical lord and giants to serve as the melee lord. And believe it or not, they have a few legendary lords to choose from. But we'll get to that later. Another mechanic of this faction, this group, could be they have the ability to spawn lizardmen units under certain conditions, like a lack of chaos corruption in certain areas, or maybe even alliances and treaties with the lizardmen. And the more in-depth alliances and treaties you have, the more lizardmen units you can use. Like, you can start out with Stinks and you can work your way up to Saurus warriors, and maybe at the higher most tier you can recruit temple guards because you are seen as trusted enough to use the most important servants of the old ones. Now, with legendary lords, we have a few to pick from. Hengus the Druid can serve as like a very powerful spellcaster. And Kator and Bulldogs. These are two giants, and according to history, they have been taken due to a raid taken from the first citizen of Remus, who launched an invasion of Albion, and he took these three back as a form of triumph or as prisoners. And we could say that for the Vortex campaign, they already got back. But this could serve as a little Mortal Empires storyline, where one of them, both of them, or all of them could start in someplace similar to Telia, and they have an objective to conquer Albion and to return home. And yeah, and back with the mainstream unit roster, we have Fen Beasts, and we have histories and sources of Gallic warriors to choose from for unit types. This is not going to be an easy campaign. But what I need to tell you another part is how their magic works. They have another lore of magic that revolves around drawing power from the landscape. So maybe the better off they cleanse the landscape, the better off forms of magic they have. And or something like that. But since chaos is magic, maybe the trade-off to chaos corruption is a better winds of magic. Anyway, they have certain magical items that we can use. Triskill, this protective amulet is a magical symbol of the Truthsayer's calling, maybe like a form of ward save or a bound spell. Staff of Light, the Staff of Light allows the Truthsayer to marshal protective magical energies the better to thwart the spells of his foes. Maybe gives off like another ward save, maybe a miscast chance on enemy spellcasters. The Spiral of Oblivion, the Dark Emissary's amulet siphons life force from the air itself to sustain its bearer. The symbol of the Dark Master and a feared sign of damnation. Few enemies dare look upon it. Okay, so this amulet's going to be pretty powerful. It is likely could have fear, and maybe, I think Vlad and some of the vampires have something similar to this. It could be Arcan the Black, but a few of the legendary lords have this ability where if they wander into combat, they generally drain life force from their enemies and essentially get healed as a result. Staff of Darkness. The Staff of Darkness strengthens the Dark Emissary's connection to energies of death and destruction. So, bound spells of death and destruction domains, perhaps. I'm speaking in D&D. Oh, sorry. So, lore of destruction, lore of death, destruction magical lores like fire, maybe increases their spell chances, and there's all sorts of things you can do with this. And in closing, I really think Albion can actually work. It serves as an interesting way to give and take, essentially, like give something new, a new faction that we've never seen before or even heard about, and yet it takes and combines various aspects that we've seen so far. It required a lot of creativity to create something like Norska. There is no army book for Norska. And thanks to the Queen and the Crone, we've seen that Avalon can have access to some Wood Elf units. If we take what we can learn, we can make Albion into something pretty cool. And realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if, say, I hope the next Dark Elf Lord is Loki or Felhart, because that makes sense to me. But should they put Maulus Darkblade in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if he has access to either Warriors of Chaos or Demon units, but that won't happen till Warhammer Total War 3. In addition, I have some ideas on how Warhammer 3 could play out, but that requires a different video. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I sure hope you can see why Albion could possibly be a good faction. I respect if it isn't picked out because it's not as iconic, but in terms of the Vortex, it actually makes sense. Either way, thank you very much for your time. Leave a like, subscribe, and send me a comment. Give me a comment. Sorry about all this. I'm still getting used to this. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and have a nice day. Bye.